We continue now at the top of Daf Kuf Chesam and Beis Mesechet Kesubos. This is Kesuvos Daf 108b. On the previous summit, the Gemara brought a Mishnah Nedarim, which said, let's say you have two people that are mudar hana from one another. They're not supposed to get benefit from one another, so still one of them can pay off the debt of the other individual. That's not considered getting benefit. And the question is, why is that not considered getting benefit? And Rava said the reason why it's not considered getting benefit is because the Mishnah Nedarim is talking about a particular situation where the malva told the love that I'm going to lend you this money, but I'm never going to really collect from you at any point in time. You can choose to pay back whenever you want, and therefore if someone else pays back the debt on his behalf, he's not really gaining any material benefit because he didn't have to pay back anyway. It was up to him when he wanted to pay back. And so the Gemara had asked, why doesn't Rav Oshia give the same answer as Rava? And the Gemara now says that Rav Oshia responds, Kisufa mi lesle. Granted that the person technically doesn't have to pay it back, but isn't he ashamed not to pay it back? So he is getting a material benefit. Hasam nami, there also, Islay hanoah, bahi hanoah, the michsef minei. There really is going to be a material benefit here, because the benefit is the fact that somebody else paid off my debt for me, so I have that benefit now that I'm no longer ashamed that I haven't paid up that debt. And Rashi over here explains, Kisufa milesle, isn't the person ashamed that he hasn't paid it off? To come michsef min malva tamin, he's always ashamed from the malva, and therefore, again, there is a material benefit, even if it's that type of loan, and that's why Rav Oshia did not give the approach of Rava. Hilgach i Rabbanan he, and therefore Rav Oshia says, if this Mishnah Nedarim really is the Rabbanan, the Amri de inyan chov laval manas lefroa uparach avero b'shvila, because the Rabbanan again on the previous summit said that if a person takes a regular normal loan which he's supposed to pay back, and his friend pays it off for him, chayiv l'shalim. So then, according to the Rabbanan, so really the person generally is chayiv to pay that person back who paid up the loan for him. V'gabi mudar hana mechila hivi asr, and therefore, by the case of a mudar hana, if you're not supposed to get benefit from someone, and that person pays off the debt for you, that would be a problem. Ki lav al manas shelo lefroa nami hanohi, and therefore, Rav Oshia says the same would be true if it was a loan which didn't have to be paid back. Still, it would be a problem if somebody was mudar hana, and then that other person who he was mudar hana from, that other person pays it back for him. It's going to be Yasser, and that's why Rav Oshia said there's no way to say the Mishnah in the Nedarim follows the Rabbanan, because again, if the Rabbanan say in general that when someone pays up a debt for somebody else, then they have to be paid back, that's considered a material benefit regardless of the nature of the loan. Rather, Rav Oshia says Ela Chananhi. Rather, Rav Oshia says you have to say the Mishnah Nedarim follows Chanan of our Mishnah. And again, Chanan of our Mishnah says that in all situations, if you pay back the debt of your friend, that person doesn't owe you money. Ubein b'chov ha'omed lefroa, bein ba'omed shelo lefroa. It doesn't matter if the debt is one that's meant to be paid up, a debt that's not meant to be paid up. Lesle gabe midi. Still, there is no claim against the person who paid it up for the other person. V'lav mechilihi. So it's not really called a real mechila. And therefore, even if the person paid it up for him and now he no longer has to pay, or he no longer is embarrassed, that's not considered a material benefit according to Chanan at all, and that would explain the Mishnah in the Nedarim according to Rav Oshia. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah. Admon Omer Shiva. Admon says 7 things. Misha meis v'iniach banom ubanos. Let's say somebody dies and he leaves over sons and daughters. Bizman shanechasim merubin habonim yorshim v'habonos nizonos. If you have a situation where the person who died left over a large estate, so the sons will inherit, and the daughters, they can get mizonos, they can take sustenance from the estate. Now, if he left over a little bit of property, habonos yizonos, so the daughters again, they will be supported. V'habonim yachzor al apsachim, and the sons have to knock on doors, they have to beg for their money. Admon Omer, Admon says, B'shvil shani zocher, if sarati, just because I'm a male, therefore I'm going to lose out. And Omer Rabbi Gamliel says, Roe ani es divrei Admon, I agree with the opinion of Admon. Rashi over here says, Nechasim muatin mefarsh b'Baba Basra, she'ein ben parnosas, shneim asar chodesh lezacharim ulenekevos. What's considered a small amount of property? It means there's not enough to support the males and the females for 12 months. Habonos yizonu v'habonim yishalu al apsachim takonas chachamim. What the Mishnah is saying is this is takonas chachamim. Really, the sons should inherit, but the chachamim said no. If there's a little bit of money, that money should go to support the daughters first, rather than going to the sons. And again, Admon says, if sarati bitmiya, should I lose out just because I'm a male? And Rabbi Gamliel says he agrees with Admon. And the Gemara says, Ma'iko Amra, what exactly is Admon saying when he says, since I am a male? Rashi over here says, "My kamar mishvil shani zocher efsarati mashma im bishvil shani zocher v'kochi yafe." The way that Admon is phrasing it, it sounds like a male has a stronger strength in terms of the inheritance, and so therefore he's saying, Hifsarati, I should lose out just because of the strong position I have. Umau yipoy kocho, what is the strong position that a male has in this situation? And the Gemara says, Amar Abaya says, Hachikamer, here's what Admon is saying. Because I'm a male and I'm able to learn Torah, therefore I should lose out. Amar le Rava. So Rava says to him, to Abaya, Man de asuk b'Torah hu de yaris, man de lo asuk b'Torah lo yaris. What kind of argument is that? Does someone who learns Torah, he inherits property, and someone who doesn't learn Torah does not inherit property? In other words, Rava is saying to Abaya, the learning of Torah has nothing to do with inheritance, and we're looking for a strength that males have when it comes to inheritance. And so the Gemara says, Alama Rava, rather Rava says as follows. Hachikamer, this is what Admon is saying. Because I'm a male, and a male has the strength that he's able to inherit if it would be a large amount of property. So if Sadati ben Chasim what, and therefore I should lose out when it's a small amount of property, and that was Admon's argument. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Hatoines Chavero Kadei Shemen. Let's say a person claims against his friend, he says, you owe me jugs of oil. Vahoda bekankanim, and the person admits that he owes the jugs, but he does not admit that he owes any of the oil. Admon Omer Admon says, Hoel vahoda b'mixas hataina, since this is a case of moda b'mixas, there was a claim made against the person, and the person admitted to part of the claim, and generally speaking, by moda b'mixas, you take a shvua. So yishava, so in this case also, the person has to take a shvua. The Chachamim say, Ein hodas mixas mi min hataina. This is not modim mixas, because you're not admitting to what is part of the claim. In other words, if a person says, you owe me $100, and the other person says back, I owe $50, so then that's modim mixas, because he's admitting to part of the claim, to the same substance that was being claimed. But over here, the person is claiming oil, and he's admitting jugs, and so therefore that is not considered mi min hataina, and it's not modim b'mixas. And the Mishnah concludes, Amar Rabbi Gamliel says, Roa Anias Devrei Admon, I agree with Admon over here. Again, I agree that this would be a case of Moda b'mixas. And the Gemara says, Shma minod, we see from here, the Rabbanan, that according to the Rabbanan, To'anu chitanu sa'orin, let's say a person claims against somebody else, you owe me wheat and you owe me barley. Vahoda b'sa'orin, and then the person admits only in the barley, so pater. So it seems to me that the Rabbanan are saying pater in that case, because it's the same thing over here. The person is claiming the jugs, and he's also claiming the oil, and the admission is on the jugs. It's the same thing as claiming wheat and barley, and the admission is only on the barley. And the Chachamim said in the Mishnah that's not moda b'mixas, so it would seem to not be moda b'mixas in this case as well. But leima tiyave tiyufta de Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel. But let us say that's a refutation of what Rav Nachman said that Shmuel said, because they said the exact opposite. Diyomer Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel, because Rav Nachman said that Shmuel said, To'anu chitenu sa'orim v'hodelo be'echad mehen. If there's a claim against somebody, he owes wheat and barley, and the person admits on one of the two, so chayiv. So according to Shmuel, he is chayiv. That is considered modim b'mixas, and that seems to go against what the Chachamim say in our Mishnah. And the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda says, the Rav says, B'to'ano mida. No, the case over here is, meaning in our Mishnah, the case is, he never even said that he's owed the jugs. He was talking about the jugs in terms of the measurement of the oil. You owe me such and such an amount of jugs of oil, and then the person admitted to the jugs. In that case, certainly, he's not admitting mi min hatayin. It's not from the same type of item that was being claimed. And there, everybody would agree. That's why the Rabbanan say, there even Shmuel would say, that it's not modim and mixas. But the Gemara says, if so, my time at the Admon. So what's the reason of Admon? If the case in our Mishnah is that all that's being claimed is oil, and then the person is coming back and admitting jugs, and that wasn't even part at all of the original claim, so why should that be a modim mixas at all? Then Admon's position does not make sense. And the Gemara continues, Elo Amar Rava, rather Rava says, Dekuli alma hechad yamar leim mole asara kadei shemen yeshli bevarcha. Let's say a person says to somebody else, you have 10 jugfuls of oil of mine in your pit. It's clear that he's giving a measurement only. So shemen katoinle kankanim lo katoinle. He's asking for the oil. He's not asking for the jugs. So therefore, in that situation, certainly it's not going to be modim and mixas if the person admits in terms of the kadim. Asara kadei shemen milayim yeshli etzlacha. Now let's say the person says there are 10 jugs of oil that are full that you have that's mine. So there it's clear, shemen v'kankanim katoinle. There it's clear he wants back the oil and he wants back the containers, and there would be a situation of modim and mixas if the person admits to the containers. Ki pligi, when are they arguing? Heichad do amar le asara kadei shemen yeshli etzlacha. When the person simply says there are 10 jugs of oil that you have that's mine. So in that situation, what exactly is the claim? Is the person claiming the oil, or is the person claiming the oil and the jugs? Admon Omer Yesh B'Lashon Hazeh Lashon Kankanim. Admon says in this case, the language implies the jugs, the containers as well, and therefore it's a case of modim and mixas. But the Rabbanan say, no, in this language you're not including the containers, and therefore it is not modim and mixas. It is simply an argument in terms of how to interpret the language. But the Gemara now says the other way. But according to that, the Rabbanan, the only reason they're saying it's not modim and mixas is because included in the language is not considered the containers. But if the person would phrase it in a way that is clear, and it's including the kankanim, so chayiv, so then apparently it would be considered modim and mixas, meaning everybody agrees fundamentally, if you claim from a person 2 items and the person admits to 1, it seems like it is modim and mixas, and that's what Shmuel said before. But the Gemara says, maybe we should say that that's a refutation of what Rabbi Chia bar Abba said, because he argued with Shmuel. Because Rabbi Chia bar Abba said, if a person claims wheat and barley, and the person admits in one of them, pater, then he's pater. And so therefore it seems like from our mission, on the contrary, it would be considered modim and mixas. It's only a question of which language was used. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Shimi bar Ashi. Rav Shimi bar Ashi says, Nasa kamisha tanu rimon beklipaso. In our Mishnah, the case is really compared to a situation where a person claims a pomegranate and its peel, meaning to say, if you're asking for oil and the containers, so that's really all like one item. It's not like 2 separate items. It's not the same thing as chitin and seorim at all. And so therefore, Rav Chia bar Abba could say, in a case of chitin and seorim, that's considered 2 separate items. That's not considered modim and mixas. But in a situation like our Mishnah, where it's the oil in the containers, that's like rimon beklipaso, that's like one item, and therefore it is modim and mixas. But the Gemara continues, Maskif lo Ravina. Ravina asks on this answer, Rimon below klipaso lo minter. If you have a pomegranate without the peel, it wouldn't be protected well. But shem and minter below kankanim. But there are other ways to protect oil even without the containers. So the containers should be considered a separate item. You can't give this answer. And rather here, what is the case? The Amar Lei says to him as follows: Asara kade shemen yesh li etzlecha. He says, I have by you 10 jugs of oil, meaning to say, you owe me these 10 jugs of oil. V'yamar le, and the person says back, V'yamar le idach, and the other person says back, Shemen lo hayadvar me'olam. There was no situation of oil, I don't owe you any oil. Kankanim nami, and with regards to the containers also, Chamisha islach v'chamisha leslach. I owe you 5, but I don't owe you the other 5. So in that situation, he's admitting partially within the category of the kankanim. Admon omer yesh b'lashon hazeh lashon kankanim. So Admon says in the original claim, he's also claiming the kankanim. Umigo to mishtaba kankanim mishtaba nami hashemen. And then once we're making him swear on the kankanim because he's moed of a mixas on the kankanim, so also he's going to have to take an oath on the oil al yedei gilgul, through what we call gilgul shvua. We roll one oath onto the other. For Rabbanan Sabri, but the Rabbanan say no, ain't b'lashon hazeh lashon kankanim. Again, when a person says asara kadei shemen yesh li'etzlecha, so in that case it's not including the kankanim, and therefore mashatanu lo hodelo, therefore what was claimed is not being admitted. It's not a case of modim and mixas, u'masha hodelo lo tanu, and that which is being admitted was not being claimed, and that's why the Rabbanan say in this particular case it's not considered modim and mixas. And Rashi over here explains, don't say that what we're talking about in our Mishnah is similar to a case where he's claiming a pomegranate with a peel. What Rabbi Chia will say is that in our Mishnah, he's actually admitting to part of the kankanim, and he's denying part of the kankanim. Within the kankanim itself, there is a denial and there's an admission. And therefore, if the original claim is including the kankanim, so then he's going to have to take a shvua. Ushvua the shemen to come mechayev admon mishum gilgul here, and the shvua on the oil, that's just because of gilgul shvua. That's what Admon says. To kasavar yesh b'lashon atzviya lashon kankanim, because again Admon holds the original claim is including the kankanim, and that's why again in the situation of the kankanim it could be modim mixas, but Rabbi Chia bar Abba would still say in a situation where chitin and seorim are being claimed, and he admits to only one of them, it's 2 separate items, there it would not be modim mixas. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Haposeg mos lechasano. Let's say somebody promises a dowry to his son-in-law, upashat lo as a regal, and he stretches out his foot to him, which is a way of saying that the person doesn't fulfill the promise. He ends up not delivering this dowry to the son-in-law. And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Kuf Tes Amud Aleph.